I was going through my closet this morning. I was looking for something and actually found something else. Some of you may recognize it. It's a wonderful hymn, 1950, or Kaminga H3, Lensatic Compass. Yes, I still have a compass. But it reminded me of a story that I had experienced a long time ago. During the Gulf War, I guess to put things in context, my job, I was an E5 at that time, and I was a medical sergeant, and was part of a forward area surgical team. There were two teams in the 101st Airborne, which was something brand new at that time. So, consisted of 7 people, basically. And you got attached to the infantry, so whatever mission that they did, you were right there with them. So, but anyway, in the Army, you get to do a lot of different stuff other than your actual job. So we just did an air assault operation into Iraq, getting settled down about 7 p.m. And the company commander comes up and he says, "Hey, Sergeant so-and-so, Captain such and such from Delta Company needs to go to Division Artillery to pick up some comm equipment because theirs is inoperable." I said, "Sure, I'll do that." So, get in Humvee, get our gear and all this other good stuff, and I point the vehicle in the general direction where I had remembered we were supposed to go, just from doing it a couple times that day. And I said, "All right, sir, just put us on azimuth, and I'll drive. Just keep me going right or left based on our azimuth." The old joke is that, I hate to say this, but the old joke is, when it comes to officers and compasses and land navigation, that, they're just lacking a lot of times. And I hate to make that joke, but it's very true in certain aspects. So, anyway, our distance at that point from Division Artillery was exactly 2 miles, and I, took note of the odometer reading and all this good stuff and wrote it down and took note of our azimuth. We had discussed it, what the azimuth was. And so we creep across the jungle to Shenango into Panama. Wrong story. So we go across the desert, and it's pitch black. You're just idling along in a Humvee. You're not going very fast at all. It's not like you can put on headlights or even blackout lights at that point because but the short story is, we go exactly 2 miles, and the most wonderful feeling ever is to get out of the vehicle and realize that you are not in your designated area, that you are exactly not around any kind of area that's inhabited. So that was a good head scratcher moment that we experienced. And so I'm like, okay, no problem. That's the way the military is. You have you have a problem, you continue to work through the solution. So, we had a brief conversation about doing a back azimuth. For those of you that understand how to do a back azimuth, you know that it's not entirely that complicated. If your course is greater than 180, then you minus 180. If it's less, then you add 180 to get to back azimuth. And I'm sure there's some more fancier stuff than that I forgot, but that's rudimentary how it works. So, the plan was at that point, by a calculated back azimuth, to go back the direction that we had came. So we did that, and surprise, this is like a bad movie that just gets worse. No, we're in the middle of nowhere, and of course, you shut off the vehicle, you look and listen and hear if you see if you have any generators or any kind of noise, anything like that you might be able to identify, other troops. But there wasn't anything. And so the decision was made that, we'll go back the opposite direction. Now, I know at this point some of you have to be really laughing at this story, because it's like once you get off course, once in that regard, it is extremely challenging to get back on course. I mean, you're basically throwing darts in the dark at that point. So, needless to say, we did this a couple times, and then there was a little bit of desperation, I suppose, on Captain's part. He said, "Well, what we could do is every 300 meters, get out and walk out 100 or so meters and just listen to see if we hear anything." It's a good idea. But to put things in context, you are in the middle of a war zone. Now, you don't know where the enemy troops are, but you're extremely close to whatever location they could be in. And it's obviously dark. I mean, sure, your eyes can adjust a little bit to starlight and see the sky, but aside from that, you're on your own. So we did this. We did that for probably a couple hours. And keep in mind that just idling along, you're just not going to cover that much distance, very quickly. So we did that several times. It was kind of unnerving. I mean, you start thinking about different things like, surprising the enemy or friendly fire, or, just who knows. I mean, it's the desert. You can step in one spot and you just never know what you're going to fall into. So we did that a few times, and I guess it was probably about 3 a.m. So there's a full almost 8 hours of crash course and land navigation with bouncing all over the place. And at this time I've already got past the idea of being frustrated and getting past the the good old-fashioned saying that officers can't read compasses and all this good stuff. Kind of evolved into it like, well, hey, this is my only resource, So, the stigma with having excuse my French, having a pissing contest with rank or being subordinate or taking those traditional military standpoints kind of threw out the window. Of course, we weren't on a first name basis, but it was the idea that we realized that the only resources we had were each other, the vehicle, our weapons, the good old-fashioned Pioneer tool set that always comes with a Humvee, a case of MREs, and 5 gallons of water, which was good. So, at some point, we decided that it was beneficial to actually just like, hey, we just need to stop and wait for daylight. And so we did that. He's like, well, you go ahead and I'll take first watch. I was like, all right, sir, sounds good. So, yeah, don't ask me how long that was. I think the funny part about that situation is that I woke up on my own and just happened to glance over, and well, not to throw rocks, but my resource that was supposed to be on first watch was actually sleep. Now, of course, in traditional old school Army standards, that would have been extremely punishable, and et cetera, regardless of rank. But kind of shuffled around, and I guess that woke him up. So I didn't make a big deal out of it, because at that point, it's not relevant. And at some point, not long after that, there was sunrise, and it's like, oh hey, I got a solution. My suggestion is, we might as well not look at the compass other than to actually get heading south. Because I'm like, hey, if we go south, we're not going to run into anything we shouldn't. That's my thinking. And we did that. And probably about 2 hours later, we crossed over one of these dunes, and there was a lot of equipment sitting on this small plateau. You could obviously tell that it was man-made and very military, without binoculars or anything like that. You could tell it was like, hey, that's something that's very well established. So we drive up on this after a very long discussion. Plan of action, so to speak. Like, well, it could be us or it could be, the enemy. It's like, well, let's get a game plan together and what our evasive or our actions are going to be. So we creep along, And eventually, things come into focus, and you can actually distinguish on what it is. And that was a huge relief. So obviously, it's our guys. And we pull up, and the sergeant of the guard, he comes over, and the captain, he had already exited the Humvee. He's like, hey, he's looking for the officer in charge and all this stuff, and he took off, and he's trying to get directions to Division Artillery. A sergeant of guard came over, and he's like, man, he says, you guys are lucky. I said, yeah, no shit. Excuse my French. But he's like, yeah, we almost lit you guys up. And I was like, yeah, I kind of thought you might. There was that nice little nervous exchange there. And anyway, the short story to conclude is eventually, yeah, we did make it to get the commo equipment and actually make it back to our own unit. But all in all, it was roughly about 18 hours of, I like to refer to it as being MIA, because that's essentially what it was. It wasn't officially declared as missing in action, but it's funny, in hindsight, how something small that seems insignificant, that relies on basic communication and a skill set, can actually turn into a very big thing. So hopefully some of you found this story a little bit humorous. Some of you actually hopefully got a deeper meaning out of the levels of communication and resources and the tenacity of working through a problem that seems to be unsolvable. Because there typically is a solution, not necessarily an easy one. But the important thing is, I can look back on that and have a good giggle about it. It's something that, the takeaway is, no matter how bad the perceived experience is, that you can still learn from it. So I hope this was beneficial. It's going to be kind of, it's an informal, I guess you would call it podcast or whatever. But anyway, thanks for listening.